Staying alive for Game 5. Wolves extend the series. No funerals today on the Minnesota basketball party.
This is Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Timberwolves talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota basketball party on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Wolves talk every Wednesday on the Minnesota basketball party, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Welcome in. My name's Sam Ekstrom, host of the show. Ron Johnson's video just went out, and we are live with you on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. Please subscribe. We would appreciate that. You can watch us on demand as well, or catch our audio on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed, where you can get wherever you get your podcasts and also hear great daily content courtesy of Locked On Wolves host Ben Beacon, who's unfortunately not with us today. Reggie Wilson's not with us today. He is flying back from Dallas. Jack Borman is with us today in Dallas. Ron Johnson with us as well. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We break down Game 4 today, how Cat and Ant outscored Kyrie and Luka, any adjustments the Wolves made, and can they complete the first comeback of its kind in NBA history? We will address all of it. Let's meet today's panelists in our opening tip.
Yeah, I'm Jack Borman, editor-in-chief and site manager at Canis Hoopus. I'm the co-host of the Locked On Wolves postcast with my man Luke Inman. I'm going to talk about what I saw in Dallas here in games 3 and 4 and talk about why I've got a funny little feeling that this series is far from over.
And I'm Ron Johnson, former Gophers and NFL wide receiver. Bear with me for the start of the show because my computer is having some weird charging issues, but I'm going to talk about why I am so excited. I had the whole funeral outfit ready to go. I had the sunglasses, I had the suit, and I got to leave it in the closet. So I'm going to talk about what has to happen on Thursday for the Timberwolves to fight off death one more time.
They'll have to fight it off another 3 times. They're perfect, though, in elimination games this year, 3-0, and they will try to extend that and extend this series at Target Center on Thursday. But let's give Jack Borman the first crack at this. He was in Dallas. He was at Game 3. He was at Game 4. Jack, it feels so much like this should be a 2-2 series, right? That's really how it should have played out. They split in Minnesota. They split in Dallas. It feels like we should be coming back to Minneapolis in a 2-2 series tie. And the margins are just so thin. If Luka doesn't hit a crazy step back 3 in game 2, all the conversation is different. But now, the Wolves, with their back against the wall, they show up in game 4. I thought they set the tone early. I thought they closed better than Dallas for the first time in the series. I thought Ant was trying to do superhero things, and he accomplished a lot of that. And Cat showed up. So to see the Wolves punch back with all the scrutiny they'd faced, all the criticism, as tired as they looked, to have the energy, to have the fortitude to get that win, that might prove your point, Jack, that they have a little bit of juice left.
Yeah, and I think that what's really unfortunate is that this series, the complexion, it really felt like the complexion of the basketball in this series changed once Derrick Lively got injured. It was a pretty scary injury. He was down on the ground for several minutes in the arena, and obviously, hope he's okay with scary head neck injury. But it was pretty clear that the Timberwolves just were not scared of any other rim protector on the Mavericks roster besides Derrick Lively. In the second half of game 3, they did a much better job of kind of quickly making decisions, getting off the ball, early in the shot clock, getting into action sooner, and just playing downhill and playing off the catch and getting into the paint, whether it was to score or to create for others. And it just caused a lot more breakdowns in the Dallas defense. And obviously, when you're making 3-point shots, it spreads the defense out a little bit. So that's what happened at the end of game 3. And then they really carried it forward into game 4. Chris Finch, I loved the quote that he gave pregame about Anthony Edwards, saying that, indecision was kind of the word he had used to describe the series for the Timberwolves, and that Ant needed to play more like a tailback, just find the hole in between the two guys that they're bringing to you and just explode through the hole. And then once you get through the hole, the second line of the defense is at your mercy. And from there, you're able to just impose your will on the defense, whether it's as a playmaker or a scorer. And you saw him really play downhill in the early parts of this game. And he just kind of kept his foot on the gas pedal the whole entire time. I frankly thought it was kind of the inverse of Game 7 against the Nuggets, where, it was really Anthony Edwards that kept the team afloat as a scorer in the first half of this game. And then Karl-Anthony Towns really picked up the baton and ran with it from there in the second half. And I just thought it was really cool the way that Karl kind of stacked each phase of what makes him a really great offensive player on top of one another, where, the first thing he did in that third quarter was they got to that horn set, ran a little 4-5 pick and roll with Gobert. He got, driving, got a couple of right-handed layups to go, then had this sweet, catch on the kind of the short corner on the left side where he gets an and one. And then he starts to kind of bomb away from three. And then, once that happens, it just totally spreads the defense out, makes it easier for Anthony Edwards to go to work down the stretch of the game. So I thought that there was a lot from Game 3 that carried over into Game 4 offensively. We can get into some of the defensive stuff a little bit later, but it's a really confident basketball team right now. And I think that, they definitely feel, Sam, that this should be 3-1, probably the other way, when you consider that they were right there in Game 3. And then Game 2, I think a lot of players and a lot of coaches were pretty frustrated about that Jaden McDaniels situation at the end of Game 2. Certainly there's way more to the game than that, especially losing an 18-point lead. But yeah, I think, now that they have won, they have this proof of concept. Jaden McDaniels said after the game, like, I absolutely feel like now we can go get 3 in a row because we just got one. So it'll be really interesting to see, if this team can kind of put forth a much better effort at home, considering they're like 1-5 in their last 6 home games. So in the playoffs. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Ron, I would love to get your thoughts on Cat. After yesterday, we talked about him at length on the show. He responds, 25-point performance, 9 of 13, timely threes, 4 of 5 from distance. Did foul out, some nasty fouls. But other than that, Cat really responds well. What were your thoughts on his performance and Game 4 in general?
Some dumb fouls, but it kind of comes with the territory of Cat, and you can see it coming. It's like a scary movie when you see the person say, "Oh, I'm gonna just go downstairs in the basement in the dark and check on the power by myself with nobody to be able to tell you guys I'm dead." That's what it feels like when Cat gets at the top of the key with somebody and he reaches once, gets away with it, and doesn't have the sense to back away and just play defense, especially when it's like 4 seconds or 7 seconds into the play clock left. You have to back up because now you're bailing them out. They're not going to get a great shot when they're at the top. Like, I think the one on Luka was literally like he was in the logo of the Mavs logo, and Luka like had nowhere to go with like 7.4 seconds, and he bumps him again because Luka knows, like, I can initiate contact once I feel you. And we know Luka does this. He spins, puts you on his back, and then he wants to try to get that like speed up dribble because you slow down and then shoot a kind of like a lean in jumper. And Cat gets those fouls. Other than that, I will say this. Reggie Miller brought this up like after Cat hit a couple threes. Like, man, maybe he is shooting 1,500 shots a day. Cat changed a lot of people's perspective. 54 points between him and Anthony Edwards, their duo, compared to the 44 of Kyrie and Luka. That's why the game was so different. That duo has to do this every game. Now, do they have this in them 3 more times? And that's the question. I think Anthony Edwards does, because he's taking a lot of high percentage shots. He's like Jack said, he's driving, he's hunting his shot more. He didn't have to guard. I think, Sam, you brought this up on my show yesterday. He didn't have to guard Kyrie as much because they did use Naw more. And that's what I said. Also, slow-mo. I got to give it to him. Like, he was very effective of, like, I think Luka was moving slow. And then he's like, wait, why are you in my matrix? Why are you moving just as slow as me? Like, it was like he couldn't figure it out because he was like, all right, is he going to go? Like, is he going slow because I'm going slow? Or is it like, what is going on? Did I take a mushroom? Like, it seemed like Luka sometimes was a little bit confused at what they were trying to do to him defensively. And I think that was the key. Anthony Edwards was able to hang off, if you notice, in the corner a lot and just defend PJ Washington on that additional pass. He was able to drop down and help out on a drive, but he wasn't forced every single time to be at the top of the key. And I think that's going to be the key down the stretch. Everybody said it, like, he looked tired. This is usually when he looks tired. Like Reggie Miller kept saying that. This is usually when he looks tired. No, it's not usually when he looks tired. He was looking tired because he was chasing Kyrie around the damn floor all the time. And that's why Stephen A was like, why would you give them that ammo? Don't give them that ammo. But for me, if Cat's this, I think they're fine. Cat has to be that all the time, though. And that's where I'm going with it. If Cat is that guy every night, and not every night, I mean, 82, that's a lot. But if he's more than not that guy, especially in the playoffs, every playoff game, he has to be that guy. That's why Scottie and Jordan were so good. That's why Steph and Clay were so good. You have to be that guy every night. If he can be that guy every night for the next 3 games, they can win in 7. But if he's not, if he's going to be second guessing, if he's going to be doing dumb stuff, shooting the ball when he shouldn't, that's going to be the problem. But I love the one clip of slow-mo on that corner 3 where he's directing traffic. He's telling like Anthony Edwards, like, hey, come this way. He's telling Cat, get behind me. I got you. Kyrie is telling Luka, all right, I saw Cat run down, so you got him now. And Luka was mesmerized by Anthony Edwards' drive. If Anthony Edwards didn't take a couple dribbles and just passed it across, Luka's probably there. But the fact that he dribbled and rolls up like he was going to shoot the jumper and then kicked it across, they were dead in the water. Cat, quick trigger, knocked down the 3, and I think that was one of the helps. The weirdest was that 4-point play for me. I'm like, there's no way they're going to give him this foul when they just called offensive foul on Anthony Edwards last game for leaning into him on his jumper. I'm like, it's the same thing. And then I just retweeted today the NBA officials' actual clip of how they were going to change it in 2022. And some people are tweeting like, did they change the rule? Is that not a rule anymore? I'm like, I'm pretty sure
was the guy they used as the example in the clip.
Exactly. The first play is what Luka does. And these refs in that game, I'm just like, all right, I get y'all were told to swallow the whistle because Reggie Miller kept saying it. They're letting them play. They're letting them play. They were, because there were some bumps, there were some smacks, there were some hits that the Timberwolves weren't getting called. But what are you saying, Jack? No, it wasn't as much.
They definitely did not swallow the whistle for the Mavericks. Luka Doncic got whatever foul call he wanted.
Maybe it was him then, because I know there was some. Well, maybe I'm looking at more interior stuff that the TV, like, because I love the interior Reggie Miller call outs, because there was a couple times where like Luka, or not Luka, but what's his name? Gafford runs through the lane, gets bumped. They don't call that. Gafford does shove the crap out of Rudy. They finally call that. Rudy then shoves Gafford. They tee them both up. So there was a lot of that stuff that if they called the foul early, they don't get to the tee. And maybe that's what the game's going to look like Thursday. Like they're at home. They're going to have to play physical. But for what it's worth, I was like really like caught up in the fact that he hit the 3, let him hit the 3. But theoretically, that's an offensive foul. Because you called it on Anthony Edwards, you called it on other people, you have to call it the same. And I think that's what everybody else was pointing out on Twitter too. Like, y'all have been calling that on everybody. And then people, of course, are tweeting me back, like, except Luka. And I'm like, well, here we go.
And Ron, that's exactly what the players were frustrated about after game 3 is that, there was a reporter who asked, all the, I think it was Mark Spears of Antscape and ESPN asked Ant what stands out on the box score. He said 31-17. That was what the
I did
were. And then someone follows up and is like, well, I'm not trying to get you fined, but like, what is your frustration with it? And Mike Conley really diplomatically just said like, hey, I think a lot of our fouls are fouls, right? Mm-hmm. But we're just asking that if you're going to call a foul on us down here and the Mavericks do the exact same thing on the other end, that we just want the same call on the other end. Just call it consistently both ways. So we're kind of on this even playing field. And they certainly didn't feel that it was any better tonight. I think that, Chris Finch very kindly, passive aggressively said that they weathered foul trouble in a pretty funny way. So we'll see if that ends up becoming a thing. But otherwise, I mean, the NBA is going to have a full week with no games if the Timberwolves lose game 5. So, maybe they do start to call it a little looser here to see if we can get 6 or 7 out of this.
I'd say let's take this thing to game 7 at home in Minnesota. I think that's what the NBA really wants. They know they want it. I do understand the whole, Celtics, Mavs and blah, blah, Kyrie's old team. And you got a bunch of narratives there. But I really think that they have to let this go 7. But, I mean, this is up to Timberwolves. It's up to the Timberwolves, and can Cat get it going?
Couple notes. The foul discrepancy last night, Timberwolves had one more foul called on them than Dallas, 23-22. Ron, just wanted to remind you, we talked about slow-mo yesterday. I called for 20 to 24 minutes of slow-mo, and he played 25. So, and I know foul trouble had to do with that, but the slow-mo minutes were huge.
Here's the thing, though, too, Sam.
Yeah,
when slow-mo went to the middle of the lane, he quick trigger got that one little floater up. That's the slow-mo I need to see. Like, I hate when he's indecisive. That's the only reason, Sam, that it pisses me off, because he gets really indecisive because nobody's guarding him from the free throw line. So, like, just do that floater every time. Work on that. Shoot that. Shoot at 1,500. Every time Karl-Anthony shoots a three, you should be shooting a floater. 1,500 of those.
It feels like he's shooting about 60% from mid-range, those little kind of push shots.
Yeah.
I would maybe Jack can check that for us. I don't have the analytics in front of me, but he's been hyper efficient in this series. I want to talk about the defensive adjustments, putting Ant on Luka as the primary primary defender last night, and we'll talk about what happens if Lively comes back in Game 5. So that's all coming up on the Minnesota Basketball Party. We're brought to you by Game Time this morning. They make NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier to acquire. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to tip-off. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And hey, outside chance, Timberwolves could be playing an NBA Finals game in this city. They've got priority last-minute deals with Game Time. And it's not just the NBA Finals. It's Major League Baseball. You can go see the Twins playing the Royals today and tomorrow. They've got comedy tickets, theater tickets, whatever you want. It's all-in pricing. It's good panoramic views from your seat, so you know exactly how it's going to look. And with great Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I used Game Time to get tickets to Game 5, and you can too. That tips off tomorrow night at Target Center. All right, back on the Minnesota Basketball Party, part of a great lineup we have here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Minnesota Football Party Mondays and Thursdays, Ron Johnson Show on Tuesdays, the Roundtable with Carol Evans, Reggie Wilson, and Julia Daniels on Fridays, plus postcasts after every single game. Check that out. Jack Borman co-hosting with Luke Inman after Wolves games. Jack, the defensive strategy last night seemed more sound for Minnesota. They put more Jaden on Kyrie, Ant on Luka. They did not have to reckon with Derrick Lively, and the dunk quotient for Dallas went down. I think they had 1 or 2 lobs, but it was a little more reasonable than it was in the previous games. What'd you see defensively, and do you think those are adjustments that will stick in Game 5?
Yeah, I do think that there are adjustments that will stick. You talked about Kyle Anderson playing 25 minutes. He became the sixth man in this game. He played the most minutes off the bench, and he was the first sub off the bench with Naz Reid. We normally see Nickeil Alexander-Walker in that role, but we saw Kyle Anderson last night, and he played point guard. And what was really nice was then once Kyle Anderson came in to give Mike Conley a blow, then Anthony Edwards shifted off of Luka Doncic, and then was able to guard, different guys, whether it was PJ Washington or Josh Green, depending on who was out there on the floor for Dallas. And I just thought that it really kept Luka out of the paint. I think Luka took a lot more contested mid-range twos, step back threes, lower percentage looks than what he had been getting earlier in the season or earlier in the series. I just thought there weren't a whole lot of straight line drives. Chris Finch pointed to Anthony Edwards' screen navigation as a really important factor for why he felt comfortable putting Anthony Edwards on Luka Doncic. I think, that you are going to play with fire a little bit in that, Ant is going to pick up a few fouls if he's guarding Luka. And we saw that he got into a little bit of foul trouble. But I think the way that, you got Jaden McDaniels on Kyrie. I think, you won't, obviously Kyrie shot 6 of 18, but, I'd wager that most of those shots came when Jaden McDaniels was not guarding him, just because I think what Jaden does is he just takes away space that you have to get up these shots and forces you to put the ball on the ground and then try to make something happen off the dribble where you can funnel someone into Rudy Gobert or force him to kick the ball out. And I thought that they were tremendous there. I think really the one area that was problematic for the Timberwolves was corner 3-point shooting for Dallas. Dallas shot 7 of 16, 44% from the corners. About 20% of their total shots came from the corners, and the corner 3 is the most efficient shot in basketball besides free throw or layup. And nobody generates more corner 3s than Dallas. The problem is that Dallas's 3-point rate, almost 20% of their shots is more than double what the NBA average is for the entire playoffs. And so Dallas generates more corner 3s than anyone in the league in the playoffs right now. I think about 14% of their total looks. But the Wolves got a little lucky in that Dallas had plenty of wide open corner 3s that they just could not get to go down. And Chris Finch talked that after the game, saying that the rotations on the backside needed to be a little bit better. And so the Wolves played a lot more drop coverage in this game with Anthony Edwards guarding Luka Doncic and being able to fight over screens, and that allows the guys in the corner to stay home a little more. As opposed to, in a high wall situation where they bring 2 to the ball, then you have to rotate behind the play and kind of X out to get your contests in. And I think there was, still some defensive breakdowns that they can clean up as it pertains to rotating 2 corner shooters. I thought that Karl-Anthony Towns and Naz Reid in particular really struggled with closing out to corner shooters, and that, when they did get out there and run those guys off the line, they had them beat by 2 or 3 steps unimpeded to go to the rim or, kick the ball to the other side of the floor and just kind of get a scramble situation going. So, even though they allowed 100 points, which is obviously a great number, there's still plenty more that the Timberwolves can improve on the defensive side of the ball. But the good news is that I think this foundation of putting Anthony Edwards on Luka Doncic and Jaden McDaniels on Kyrie Irving and Mike Conley on Derrick Jones Jr. is probably the best the best foundation you can build some of those improvements upon. So it'd be really interesting to see if that's able to continue. And I also think too, Rudy Gobert deserves some shine here. Rudy Gobert played some great defense down the stretch of this game, contesting shots on Kyrie and Luka that people won't talk about when the Wolves win a game, but they sure as hell will make sure to mention it when the Wolves lose a game. So I do think Rudy deserves some shine there.
Yeah, Rudy was 13 and 10 last night, pretty efficient. Ron, the tough part is going to be holding Luka and Kyrie down for 3 more games. You did it once. You really got to hold at least one of them down in each of the next 3 games if you're going to complete this comeback. So do the Wolves have it in them defensively to do that? You're muted.
Sam, on the show yesterday, I said that. I was like, you have to put Anthony Edwards on Luka. He doesn't move as fast. He's not running around the court like Kyrie nonstop, trying to find space, trying to find holes. Kyrie does a ton of short stop dribbles, and then he's catching you with the hesitation, and then he's going to Euro left hand, throw it up over Rudy Gobert. Like, he moves way faster and quicker than Luka. And I think that switch defensively was a big help. Also, and Jack's right, it was foul trouble, but I do agree with getting some other guys in there defensively just to give them a breather. Whether Anthony Edwards got 8 minutes of rest, even if it's at 8 minutes, let these guys handle those 2 guys defensively. And then for sure, when one of their stars come out, that's when you take Anthony Edwards out. Like, you can get him out to get him a breather, let him sit. But when they're both out there, you have to have them out there to be able to deal with them on the switch, because when they switch, and this time it was interesting too, even with Rudy Gobert, and somebody tried to say this, I don't know if it's true or not, that last play where Luka hit the step back, they're saying Rudy probably should have, or the call, because nobody knows what the actual call is, was to have Rudy push Luka forward and make him shoot a 2, because even a 2 doesn't kill you. It just ties the game up and you have a chance. And so when you, even looking at that defensive responsibility, when Rudy was out, even, it felt like they were moving faster. It felt like they were flowing better. Naz Reid, Kyle Anderson, Anthony Edwards, I think it was Mike Conley and Cat. And those 5, now that's when Cat got in foul trouble, but those 5 seem to be flowing a little bit better than when Rudy's out there. And I know we're going to bring this up with Lively coming back. How do you handle that? But without Lively out there, it seemed like that was a better 5 on the court, because you didn't have that. Like, Gafford is good, but he doesn't do the same things that Lively does. Similar, but not the same. And so that was the key. But I'm fine with the defense, the way they played it. I think that's the way to go moving forward. I also think, like, don't talk about it. Like because the reporters are going to ask those questions or whatever, and shoot arounds maybe, or, pre-interviews or this week's media open. Don't talk about it. Just say, you know what? We're going to see what coach puts up there, and we're going to get out there and play. Don't give them any bulletin board material, because I guarantee when Kyrie saw that, oh, you want me because you wanted KD, you did that. Then you wanted to take on Murray, you did that, and then you talked about Kyrie. Like, don't poke a bear, and I think that was the key too. Kyrie had bulletin board material, but other than that, I'm fine with the way they played it. I always go back to, even with the defensive prowess, it's still Cat and Anthony Edwards. Those two have to be effective and outscore Kyrie and Luka. But I think Jack brought it up too. The corner threes by PJ Washington that wasn't hitting, I think that's the side of it too. Like, he wasn't on like he had been in previous games.
And
to your point, Ron,
part of that's just like forcing the ball out of Luka and Kyrie's hands and making someone else beat you too, which is also important. It's good.
You got to live with that.
Yeah.
The other weird one was like Dante Ekstrom came in the game and started cooking a little bit, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, he was one of the first dudes to have his own shoe with Adidas as well early on in his career. And then he kind of went nowhere with it. But yeah, when I saw him come in, I'm like, what is going on? Like, at first I thought it was dude from the Celtics, Grant, whatever. Did he go to the Pacers? Grant Williams. Yeah. I like, that's why, like, he had a look, but then I was like, oh, his hair is too nice. Like Grant Williams has terrible hair. But when you saw Dante Ekstrom come in, and you're just like, there's no way. And then even Green came in and gave them some key minutes. And so that was kind of, for me, I'm like, oh, this is not going to go well. But even though they tied the game up, the Timberwolves did not give up. They didn't back down. And I think it was Anthony Edwards having his legs in the fourth quarter. That was the key.
Yeah. And to your point about Edwards, Ron, he can't resist in his post game kind of making some bold statements, like saying, yeah, we'll be back. I'll be giving Micah Parsons some new shoes in game 6. He loves challenging himself.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Like, he can't resist. And typically he follows through on it. Now, it's not always going to play out that way. At some point he's going to make some guarantee that doesn't happen, and it's going to sound dumb, but he usually follows through when he has that kind of confidence. I know Jack was there for that post-game press conference, and you said before the show, Jack, that it was one of the most epic Ant sessions that we've ever had.
Yeah, it was an all-timer for sure. You could just get that sense with him. I won't say some of the things he was saying in the locker room before he walked out to the podium, but then once he gets there, he made very well sure in the locker room that Karl-Anthony Towns was going to be up there with him at the podium. And then once he gets up there, I mean, it was just kind of open season for him to just kind of start dropping some of these one-liners for sure. And then, the funniest thing was then, probably about 60-70% of the way through this press conference, Mike kind of opens the door, and there's a little hallway before you get to where the podium is. And Mike's just standing in the hallway, and Ant goes, and that's Mike Conley. Bite. He's old as bleep, and he was getting downhill. He was laying it up. He was, doing his thing. He's wearing these clown pants, but that's my OG. That's my point guard, and he was great tonight. And then, Ant was trying to leave the stage, and is still just standing up, and then just picks the mic up and holds it in front of his face, and just does the rest of the press conference standing. And every answer, after the first couple, were just hilarious. And it just is exactly why everyone gravitates towards this guy. I mean, after game 3, Mark Spears asked him, why is the sky never falling for you when the sky is seemingly falling all around you? And he just said, I've been through the worst already, so the sky is never fallen for me. He's like, I'm always positive. I'm always happy. There's no use in being negative. And that's exactly the type of energy that you need from your number one guy if you're going to try to do something that no one else has done. And then you combine that with a coaching staff that I think is extremely level-headed. There were 2 things written on the whiteboard in the Timberwolves locker room before the game. There was a big number 8 in the top right-hand corner for 8 wins to go. And there was one other thing. It said 1 in a row with like 4 exclamation points. and they're very much focused on just the next game. But that doesn't mean that you can't, kind of bottle up all this confidence and positive energy from this game and carry it forward and kind of, let that become some swagger, some stuff to you that you kind of carry with you and use as fuel to kind of help get you through game 5 at home. And then, like you said, Sam, if you're able to get to game 6, there is zero pressure on the Wolves in game 6 down there in Dallas, or down here in Dallas. And there were some nervous fans that were talking to each other on the way out of the building that were not too happy after last night's game. So we'll see what happens. But definitely an all-time Ant press conference. I implore you to look it up on YouTube and go watch the whole thing if you're able to, because it will undoubtedly brighten your day.
Yeah, and before we go to break, I want to get, Ron, your quick thoughts. We brought up Lively. Scale of 1 to 10, like how much do you think it matters if he returns in game 5? How big a deal is it?
I think for them mentally, it's a big deal because, I mean, you bought in, what's his name with the shoulder? I don't want to say his name wrong.
Kleba.
That was Kleber, but yeah, Kleba. You bring him in and he's saying like he can't even shoot comfortably. So you're losing. Like if he gets the ball at the top, because he could shoot, we know that. Like he was shooting well from 3, but then he hurt the shoulder. And you don't have to worry about that because he said unless that was all cap and he's just saying that for the media so that the team like thinks like leave me open. But yeah, you can leave him open and he's not shooting comfortably. Like he did have the little floater he tried, but he said when he tried to shoot in warmups, he said it didn't feel good. So I think Lively coming back gives you a guy, one, that when you throw an alley-oop, he's going to go up and get it. He's another rim protector. He's another rebounder. And he's a guy that irritates Rudy Gobert just as much as what's his name. So when you look at Gafford and him, you're basically switching in and out the same guy. And I think that's the other key. When you bought in Kleba, you're not getting the same type of energy. You're not getting the same type of play. You're getting a guy that's unsure if he's even 100% ready to go. So I think it does matter. I don't know how much it matters for the Timberwolves, but I think for the Mavs, it does give them like all right, he's back out there on the floor. But at the end of the day, like the concussion protocol stuff, even if the kid was in it, I think the NBA, or not the NBA, but the Mavs are going to push it because the way they were saying like he was dizzy a little bit, didn't feel right. He shouldn't be in right away, but whatever. Like they want to clear him in concussion protocol. Normally, like it's like a week. Well, they're going to clear him in a couple days. So they want to do it. But for him, it's going to be that too. For the Timberwolves, I mean, not to say be dirty, but when he gets in there, you got to bump and bang him a little bit. Like make him realize like this is a game. We're not going to take it easy on you just because you were hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kleba separated his right shoulder, his shooting shoulder, about 3.5 weeks ago, and is definitely on the earlier side of coming back. So it makes sense that he's not 100% there.
When we return, what does it take to come back from a 3-0 deficit in the NBA? And can the Wolves do it? That's next on the Minnesota Basketball Party. All right, that was a quick pause. We return. Wolves go to Game 5 at home, Game 6 in Dallas, Game 7 back at home. Now, the stat they showed last night on TNT, of the 155 teams that have failed to make the comeback, 95 of them didn't escape Game 4. So the Wolves are already in the minority. Then I think it was another 45 didn't escape Game 5. So if you get to Game 6, I mean, you're already in rarefied air for teams that were down 3-0. Last year, when the Celtics got to a Game 7 against Miami, I think they were the 4th team to reach a Game 7, and none have won. So, Jack, first crack at this. What would it take for the Wolves to be the 0-4 Red Sox and do this thing and be the first of their kind to make this comeback? What does it require?
I think the first two things it requires are things that are completely within their control, which are, one, making their free throws. They are shooting the most free throws of any of the conference finalists in these conference finals so far, like about 23 a game. But they're third in made free throws because they're last in percentage. They're shooting 70% from the free throw line in this series. They were 16 of 25 last night, 64%. And they turned the ball over 15 times, which is like, a somewhat high number, but they gave up 30 points off of those 15 turnovers. And Luka and Kyrie are two guys that absolutely go for just momentum kill shots. whenever they can, especially off of turnovers. And that's when they're able to spread you out and transition and get to the corners and make all these big time shots. So I think they've got to take care of the ball first and foremost. And that starts with Anthony Edwards. He had 6 last night, and those became, I think, 8 or 9 points for Dallas going the other way. So he's got to clean that up, number one. And then, I also like, and then I said the free throw shooting as well. And then from there, I don't necessarily think that Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns need to outscore Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic because of what we saw in the first 3 games of the series and still how close all of those games were. I think you have to trust that the Timberwolves others will continue to outplay. The 3 through 7 guys will continue to outplay and outscore that of the Mavericks. I think the Timberwolves absolutely need to continue to do that. And you just need Ant and Karl to play, marginally better than what they did in the other 3 games of the series. I think if those 2 guys can get you 50 plus points in each of these next, 3 games potentially, I think that would be a comfortable number for me, because I think you trust that the others for the Wolves are going to outscore the others of the Mavs by at least 15 or 20 points. And that's again a great recipe for Minnesota. And then the last thing they've got to do is they've got to keep Dallas off the offensive glass. There is no reason why the Mavericks should be out rebounding the Wolves on the offensive glass, but they've continued to do it in this series. They did it again last night, and I think that's become a big problem for them when it comes to closing games down the stretch. Is that if you do all the work to get a stop, you've got to be able to find a way to come up with a rebound to complete the possession, and at least just buy yourself another 24 seconds of not having to defend Luka and Kyrie on the other end in the fourth quarter. And so for me, it's all those things, and I think they've just got to really value every single possession. I think we saw in the first few games, we saw way too much of Rudy Gobert shooting something other than a dunk or a very simple layup. He catches the ball in the middle of the floor. I just think that's playing with fire. It's only going to feed the Dallas momentum. If he misses that and they score going the other way, that's basically as good as a turnover. So they've just got to play really smart basketball and hope that their stars play more like stars. And if they get those 2 things, it kind of boils it down in summary to those 2 things. I think it's certainly possible when you think about the fact that you just take care of business at home, which I think they can do, because it doesn't sound like Lively is going to play, but we'll see. And then all the pressure is on Dallas for Game 6, and you just prove that you can go in and win in Dallas. So it should be fun here.
Yeah, home teams in the Wolves 15 playoff games, home teams are 5-10. So home court really has not mattered in the Timberwolves playoff run at all, which is, it's good. It means you can win in Dallas. It also means you are not guaranteed anything at home in Game 5 or Game 7. But Ron, what is the key to doing something that's never been done? What do you think?
So, I'm keeping it simple. Cat and Ant, like the way they did it, 54 points to Luka and Kyrie's 44. They have to outscore them. And I'm not saying push it or force it. I'm saying do exactly what they did. Anthony Edwards, I like the term running back. Like, he has to split the lane. He has to attack when it's not there, like Barry Sanders, because I heard Dan Patrick talking about Barry Sanders this morning, so that's in my head now. So Barry Sanders, when he gets in the hole, if it's not there, come out, find another hole. Like, Anthony Edwards was really smart with the ball. He didn't force it. He wasn't getting offensive fouls. Vice versa, Karl-Anthony Towns, if he were to just, once he gets going, if he were to slow down just a little bit, because Anthony Edwards has that perfect hezzy, like, Euro stop now, because he realizes if I keep one foot in the air, I can legally stop. I hate that, but that's the new NBA rule. It doesn't say anything about when you have to release the ball. It just says you have to release the ball at some point. If Karl-Anthony Towns could slow down, and Michael Grady brought that up when we interviewed him, he's just so big that he forgets sometimes that they're gonna just stand in your way because they know you can't stop. You're a freight train. But I think that's the key. Like, he can't get into foul trouble too early. Fouling out towards the end, I know it's tough, but at that point, I think hopefully they have the game under wraps, but he can't get in foul trouble too early, too many more games down the stretch. But to do something that's never been done, it's going to come down to those 2. Like, you have to be historic. You have to have great nights. You have to, maximize your sleep. You have to make sure when you show up to the stadium and when you're playing in this game, you're doing everything to make sure your body is ready to go. and the defense has to continue to do that, not let Anthony Edwards get tired. I think it was Mike Conley did this when Luka had it at the top, or Kyrie, one of the two. Mike kind of rushed him when Gobert had to switch off to say, you know what, I'm not leaving you on Rudy Gobert by yourself. So he had to get rid of the ball. And then they did the whole throw around, got it to PJ Washington. He ended up missing. But that's the key. You cannot leave Rudy Gobert, because that's what they want. They want Rudy at the top. You cannot leave Rudy at the top with them. Yes, he's the defensive player of the year, but that's not why. It's not because he's at the top. It's normally more of a team thing, and the team defense has been great. Rudy's been a catalyst for that, but you can't leave him at the top either. That's the other part of that.
I think that if KG decides to come to one of these home games, I feel like that's a cheat code. Like that gets Ant scoring 40, because Ant does that kind of thing. 50 Cent is in the front row. Okay, I'm going to score 50. KG's in the front row. They're not going to lose. Maybe, can we play that card in game 5, get us to game 6, and then see what happens? Let's get KG in the building.
We need to start that tweet today then. Like, everybody's got to retweet this if you want to see KG in the building for game 5.
He said he's coming. Come on, okay. KG, let's go. 1 minute each on this. Now, we know who awaits the winner of this series. It's Boston, number 1 seed in the entire NBA. 1 minute each. Jack, what is awaiting the winner of this series? And do you think either team has a decent chance against a Celtics team that has not been tested at all in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think a very vulnerable team is what's awaiting the winner of this series. I don't think that the Celtics have had to deal with a number 1 star remotely close to what Luka Doncic or Anthony Edwards can give you so far in this postseason, when you consider that Jalen Brunson, didn't end up making it to the conference finals, and Tyrese Halliburton gets hurt. So and Boston doesn't really have a point guard either, and that's kind of bothered them in key stretches, and they've fallen down and gotten behind in a lot of the games that they've played, so far in this postseason. And they just haven't had to play against stars for extended stretches too. When you consider, I think Donovan Mitchell got hurt too and missed games in that series. So it's really going to be about, how many times is Boston going to be able to bail itself out of all these sticky situations that they're getting themselves into. And then, will it come down to if Porzingis is healthy, because he completely changes the complexion of that team, especially inside. They're pretty thin inside if Porzingis isn't there, and you're asking a lot of a 36, 37-year-old Al Horford, to give you 30, 35 minutes a game without Porzingis. So I think that's important too. But Boston's a vulnerable team, Sam. Like you said, they haven't really played anybody. They certainly are not as tested as either of these two Western Conference teams.
Ron, your thoughts?
Yeah. So with me, when I look at this, I'm going to go with whoever in the West. I think the West, either of these teams can challenge them. I just don't. Like I said, we brought this up yesterday. The Celtics have not been challenged. And so I think the Wolves or the Mavs, both, I think whoever comes out the West, personally, it feels like they're going to win the NBA championship. Just seems like it's a stronger, 2 teams coming from this side, challenges. You had the Nuggets, you had the Suns, you had the Thunder. You had a lot more on the West than you did on the East. And so that's why a lot of people even said they need to reseed this thing 1 through 16 and stop this East-West crap. Let's just go play East-West, but then when it comes to the final 16, do the NCAA. Just reseed it 1 through 16. Best team at the top, worst team at the bottom. And I guarantee you're going to have more West teams in the top 8 than you will the East. But I think that's what the challenge for them. The Celtics, to me, seem like a team that they haven't faced teams that will put stress on them on both ends of the floor, and both the Mavs and the Wolves do that.
Yeah, I mean, they got to close out Miami without Butler. They closed out the Cavaliers without Mitchell, and they closed out the Pacers without Halliburton. So they haven't had to really win a gutty closeout game yet. I think they would have a different story in the NBA Finals. But let's predict the week, our final moments of the show, as Jack gets ready to board a plane in Dallas and come home. The Timberwolves play Thursday and then potentially Saturday and Monday. So our next show, we will either be talking about the greatest comeback in NBA history or the beginning of the offseason. Jack, predict the week.
I've been wrong with a lot of my predictions. So I'm going to say Mavs in 6. I think that the role players for Dallas find a way to get it done at home here in Dallas. So I'm hoping that my prediction streak and my poor medical examiner skills continue here.
Ron.
I'm gonna say they win 5. I don't know about say. They're going to 7. I'm gonna just stay positive. They're going to 7. But yeah, I'm gonna say they win game 5 for sure.
So you're saying they lose in 7?
I'm not saying they lose in 7. I'm saying they're going to 7.
You gotta say, Ron. We're gonna hold you to it.
You know what? Let's just say they win in 7. Like they're gonna pull history 155-1. Somebody eventually has to cheat death, and it's gonna be the Timberwolves because we know the Grim Reaper wins more than not. But there's been those times where people were like on the flat line. That's what I was gonna do earlier. If it was the beep, beep, beep. Like that's the Timberwolves. They have that. They got a pulse. And unfortunately, I watched Madam Web. I'm hoping they remake it to the second group because when the girls actually get their powers, they're way better. It has a Spider-Man tie-in, but that's what happened. The Madam Web dies, and then she realizes her fate and her history and where her mom came from and what spider bit her. That's what it feels like. They died, and then boop, Anthony Edwards gave them a little bit of a pulse. So I'm gonna go. They win in Game 7.
That movie sounds as bad as everyone else seemed to think it was.
Madam Web?
Yeah.
You know what? Because I know Peter Parker. I like the tie-in. So that was it. I just liked how they tied in Peter Parker's family.
Great tie-in.
Yeah.
I have been the Grim Reaper recently in my sports attending career. I've been to a lot of like season-ending Twins games, Vikings games, and I'm going to Game 5. I feel like I am the jinx. So unfortunately, I'm going to go Mavs in 5, but I will at least be there for the funeral. If the Wolves
you and so many
out.
other people tweeted that like, I was going to go to Game 2, but I'm like, I'm going to wait to Game 5.
Yeah,
I didn't happen.
Didn't think those tickets were getting used, but apparently they will. Jack Borman, Ron Johnson, I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thanks for watching and listening on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed. We'll be back next Wednesday, postcast after Game 5, and the football party tomorrow here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Thank you so much for the engagement, for the comments, and we will chat next week.